So I know we were talking about patriarchy and misogyny, and I don't want men to walk away, especially from my talk, to think that you're not valued. Listen, some of my biggest allies, I think, are males. We're gonna bring one out soon. So I want to talk about allyship, especially in pain. Hans created the Women's Symposium last year and made sure we do it every single year. So thank you. I know everything is long overdue for us, but I just want to really highlight allyship because I think that's what we can do against misogyny is have our allies kind of help us out with that part. So here's one of my favorite allies. So Dr. Ramesh Zacharias is President, CEO, Medical Director of the CPCOE, who are also going to be announcing some funding tomorrow. And there is funding for women's health, so women's veterans' health. So Dr. Ramesh is the unofficial Yoda to a lot of us in leadership. And if you've ever wondered how to lead with integrity, calm under pressure, and swagger, this is your guy. He's worked with the Department of National Defense, and he's cared for veterans with deep respect, always starting with thank you for your service and following up with now it's our turn to serve you.
So the one thing I know about Ramesh, and I'll say that now, is that everything Ramesh has ever touched in the pain space has been a success, including the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence for Canadian Veterans. And so I want to please welcome the General of Pain Care, the Commander of COM, and a mentor we're all lucky to have.
That should tell you everything they know about me. They play Highway to Hell. Welcome to hell. They requested I not move to the music because right after this is lunch. And they didn't want people throwing up before lunch. So they obviously talked to my wife. So there was no movement while the music was playing. So my name is Ramesh Zacharias. I'm the President, CEO, and Medical Director of the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence for Canadian Veterans. We're an independent, not-for-profit organization funded by Veterans Affairs Canada. Since our inception in 2020, the CPCOE has funded over 75 research projects, and some of the researchers are actually in this room. In addition, the CPCOE has awarded 10 capacity building initiatives to support master's and PhD students to encourage research to benefit veterans and their families suffering from pain and mental health issues. On behalf of the veterans we serve, I want to thank you for what you have done for them. Hans had mentioned that we are in the midst of our regular cycle of funding research. There will be requests for proposals that are due on the 27th of June. Each year, we distribute over 1 million to the successful applicants. We have a booth here, so please attend the booth so that you can find out more information about the 3 streams. And we're very blessed in this country from all the speakers who have talked about earlier today. We have some amazing group of researchers, and we're fortunate to be able to support you. So now it's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our next keynote speaker, retired General Walter Natynczyk, who last November was the recipient of the 2024 Vimy Laureate for Excellence in Defense and Democracy. General Natynczyk's 37-year illustrious career is marked by a series of high-profile positions, including his leadership as Chief of Defense Staff, President of the Canadian Space Agency, and Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs. His extensive service has left an indelible mark on the Canadian defense landscape. Having said that, I would like to highlight 2 remarkable qualities that are relative to his core skills. While he's truly a visionary leader, in 2008, he, along with Surgeon General Hans Young, made the decision to create 3 research institutes to address the physical and mental challenges facing serving members and veterans in Canada. Today, the 3 institutes, CIMVER, Atlas, and CPCOE, collectively receive over $16 million in funding annually from Veterans Affairs Canada. Walt played a critical role in getting government support and seeing it through Parliament, and I can assure you, not an easy task. The second enduring quality of General Natynczyk, despite his numerous accomplishments, he's extremely humble. The troops he commanded knew him as General Natynczyk, but everyone affectionately referred to him as Uncle Walt. He is blessed with an amazing spouse, Leslie, and 3 marvelous children, all of whom who are currently serving in the Canadian Armed Forces. Please join me in giving General Walter Natynczyk a warm welcome to CPS.
You guys awake? Are you awake? It's been a long morning. Is this thing even on? Do I even need this microphone? No way. You know, afterwards you could probably put a claim in for hearing loss after this pitch, eh? Yeah, listen, it's a real honor to be here, and it's an honor to be introduced by Dr. Zacharias, who is the leader and the steady hand on the tiller of the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence for Veterans. And listen, I'm here on this this morning here. I'm the only obstacle between you and lunch, right? And so I've been told that I could have like an hour and a half to speak. You know, for an old general, it takes about a half hour just to say hello. But no, I'll try to keep it as brief as I can because I recognize how important it is for you to network here over lunch. That's really one of the great values of these conferences, to hear the amazing magic that researchers have found and sharing those lessons, but then to network together is so absolutely critical to you. I just want to do a little bit of a survey, first of all. Anyone here who has served in the military or veterans from the military? Okay, there you go. How many in here have family members who served? A lot of hands, a lot of hands. Thank you for supporting your serving member or your veteran across the board. I put up my first slide here of the Masterpiece Monument at Vimy Ridge. Have many folks been to Vimy Ridge and seen? There you go. And I would really implore you to go, because at Vimy Ridge, Canada became a nation. Canada became a nation. On the 9th of April, 1917, over 100,000 Canadians reached for the top and took the ridge where other nations had failed to do so. Over 100,000 Canadians from coast to coast to coast came together. Casualties were over 3,500 killed that day. And after 4 days, Canada held Vimy Ridge. And today in France, that is Canadian soil. And I would ask you to go because, and the message of Vimy Ridge is, folks came together from all parts of this country to be part of something greater than themselves. And as I look at all of you here today and what you do to support the well-being of Canadians or our international allies and friends, you are serving and doing something greater than yourselves. So this morning, I just have three really fast points I want to share with you. One is the fact that our men and women who serve and those veterans are our national treasure because they have dedicated themselves to service. The second is that government has supported these 3 centers of excellence to study veterans, also serving members and families, but with a view to ensuring that those lessons are shared with Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And the third point, it's all about collaboration, partnership, cooperation, sharing these lessons, and again, coming together. Now listen, I'm just a retired guy. I'm just a soldier, an old soldier. I served in government for 45 years, and I thought I wouldn't be doing any of these gigs again, okay? I'm just like a full-time grandpa, all right? Now, but I found out something here when I took my first retirement before I went off to the Space Agency or Veterans Affairs. I found out something that retired folks never tell those who are still working in the trenches. And it's a secret. It's a secret. And here it is. I'll share it with you. Retirement is overrated. Retirement's overrated. Anybody here retire and then go back to work? Any hands up? Oh, there you go. You figured it out. You guys figured it out, didn't you? There you go. Here's the reality. The moment you retire, your whole family knows you have time on your hands. And they're going to ask you to do stuff so that they can go away. Because, you know, when you're in the trenches, when you're in your labs, in your classrooms, and you're in the clinic, you're in your cubicle, you're just dreaming of what you want to do in retirement, aren't you? You want to go on a cruise, you want to go golfing, you want to go sit on a beach somewhere. But let me paint a picture for you. 2 months after giving up command of the Canadian Armed Forces, 100,000 soldiers, regular and reserve, 50,000 cadets, 5,000 rangers, and about 250,000 family members that I was supporting. And it's February in Ottawa, Saturday morning, minus 25. And I'm walking 3 dogs, none of which are mine. 3 dogs, none of which are mine. These dogs belong to people I love, and they're off on holidays, and I'm walking their dogs. And you can't make this stuff up, okay? Now, as I'm bending over to pick up another pile, you know what, put it in a little baggie in my pocket, a neighbor who I love stuck her head out of the back door and said, "Oh, how the mighty have fallen." I tell you what, folks, I went back to my sweetie, brought her a coffee, said, "Hey, babe, I got to go do something else." But more germane to this topic, I realized it wasn't about me. It's about service to country. It's about service to country. And I would just say to all of you that, as the last speaker said, Canada is one of the finest, best countries in the world. It really is. And I'm not sure, I used to say this about our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and women, I'm not sure if it's the water we drink or the beer we drink, I don't know. But maybe it's our multicultural mosaic. Maybe it's because our respect for each other, our human rights, universal health care. Heck, I just had a major little heart thing happening. I had a major heart thing, and I had a full theater of clinicians and amazing folks, and all the follow-up, and I paid $14 for parking. Okay? Or maybe it's the quality education that we give folks of all ages, or maybe it's the fact that we welcome immigrants to our country because we know that immigrants make our country stronger. And I say that my father was a Free Polish Army soldier. My mother was in the German Air Force. They fought against each other in World War II, met in Winnipeg at a church dance, and that is Canada. God bless us all. But the reality is we are so lucky in this country, and yet that freedom is not free. The freedom is not free. Over 2 million Canadians signed up for the military. You know, 1 in 50 on Canadian streets is a Canadian veteran. And over our history, we have shown the service, the courage, and the sacrifice so that we could have those freedoms, so that we could live in the best country in the world. And just like those soldiers who took Vimy Ridge and all those other horrible battles of World War I, the Somme, Passchendaele, we are this week commemorating the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. If you watch the news the last few days, it is just inspiring to see those still living World War II veterans who are there in the Netherlands right now as we commemorate their service and their sacrifice. Absolutely. Oh, what happened now? Did I just turn this thing off? Is there a cane? There we go. 80 years ago, the end of World War II, where again over 1 million Canadians put on a uniform and went around this world to bring security, peace, and freedom. And we liberated the Netherlands from autocratic, tyrannical, criminal rule. And that same courage and tradition of service in Korea, where over 25,000 Canadians served, over 500 killed in Korea, where again the courage of our folks, they even called artillery on their own positions in order to stop an onslaught and another assault. And that same tradition of service and courage for our mission in Afghanistan. We had 40,000 Canadians sign up to go to Afghanistan. I tell you what, going to Afghanistan, I was visiting the troops about 20 times in Afghanistan, and I would meet grandparents, folks who would join up the military in their 50s, just so that they could be part of something greater than themselves and contribute to peace and security. And yet the price was so high. The price was so high. 165 soldiers, sailors, airmen and women, journalists, diplomats killed in theater. And thousands suffering the physical wounds and injuries, and thousands more suffering the invisible mental health injuries. Folks, during this time, I was Chief of Defense from 2008 to 2012. I can remember a visit from a counterpart south of the border, the Vice Chairman of the U.S. Chiefs of Defense, Admiral Gia Bastiani. And he said to me, "Walt, whatever you do, please take care of your wounded, your ill, and your injured," from the outset. And he was talking about how perhaps they had not taken care well enough of their Vietnam veterans. And he said, take care of your folks. And so we tried to do everything we could, but we realized that we had not been in combat since the Korean War. We had not had the injuries on the scale since the Korean War. And we had so much to learn and relearn. You know, the fact that every soldier had to be a combat first aider, trauma care on the battlefield, because the real magic happens in the first 10 minutes after the injury. And then how do you ground evacuate, air evacuate, and get those sailor soldiers, airmen and women to the best operating table within minutes? And then how do you then bring them all the way back through our Allied hospital with the U.S. forces in Germany at Landstuhl, and then bring them back home? And we realized that if we can get our folks back to a hospital in Kandahar very quickly, 90% of them would live. If we can get them back here to Canada, 99% would live. But it was never 100%. Just last week, I drove down a see my daughter who's in the Navy. She's a physician's assistant with the Navy aboard ship, driving down Trans-Canada Highway, going through Edmundston. Many of you have probably done that trip, and just off on the side of the highway is a cemetery, and there is the final resting place of Master Corporal Charles-Philippe Michaud, a great soldier who stepped on an improvised explosive device, and we got him all the way through Launchville. We got him back to Quebec City, but then the infection took place and took his life. And so we tried to do everything we could to take care of these folks, and we realized how much we forgot. And it's at that point that the Surgeon General of the Canadian Armed Forces, Commodore Dr. Hans Jung, came up to me and he said, "Hey, sir, we are way behind our allies in terms of medical research for our military, for our veterans, and for families. And we got to pick up the pace." And what had occurred was that a little cabal had formed in Kingston, Ontario, between Queen's University Medical Faculty, a lady named Dr. Alice Aiken, and Royal Military College, Dr. Stephanie Belanger. Both of them were serving reservists in the military, and they were in cahoots with a former base commander, Brigadier General Bill Richard, and between them they came up with this idea for a research institute. And I supported it. I went to Minister Peter MacKay, the Minister of Defense at the time, and I said, "Hey, sir, this is really important. We got to giddy up on this, like right now." And I'm sorry I use a few of these cowboy or Texas accents. I served for 2.5 years with the U.S. Army, both in Fort Hood, Texas, and in Iraq. I spent all of 2004 in Iraq. So I find that from time to time, especially when I get emotional, I get this little Texas twang. J'ai un accent en français, un accent comme un Texan, même en anglais et en français. So, but anyway, I said we need to get on with this. And with the minister's support, we got it through government, and so was created the Canadian Institute of Military and Veteran Health Research. And I used this slide of the search and rescue technician parachuting into the high Arctic, just so that we don't forget the fact that Canadian soldiers, sailors, airmen, and women put their life on the line every day to defend and also to protect Canadians across our country. But CIMVAR was created, and it is a network of 46 universities across this country. They have launched almost 100 research programs focused on serving and veterans, but also on military families. And I talk about families a lot because the families are undoubtedly the informal caregivers to the serving members and veterans. And so while we're taking care of those who are serving and veterans, we must ensure for family resilience. Absolutely vital for the well-being of those who have served. So we got this CIMVAR moving, and it's cracking along, but we're still realizing that we have forgotten so much. And I got to share with you, December of 2009, January of 2010 was a very, very tough time for the Canadian Armed Forces. In that 2-month period, around Christmas, we lost 10 of our serving members. 10. 5 in combat in Afghanistan, and 5 to suicide back here at home. And I brought the leadership team of the Canadian Armed Forces together, and I said, what's with this? We do everything we possibly can to enable mission success of these sons and daughters of Canada in the fight. And are we doing everything possible so that they are safe and secure when they're here at home? And we weren't doing enough. But my time as Chief of Defense was coming to an end, and I was asked by the Prime Minister what I wanted to do after being in the military. And I said, "Sir, I had a lot of offers from the private sector, but truth be told, I'd like to be the Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs, because I am not satisfied with how that department is taking care of my soldiers, sailors, airmen, and women who are wounded. And I would hold on to them because I was worried that they would not be supported well enough when they got out." So I wasn't surprised that I got a phone call saying, "Hey, we want you to be a public servant." Terrific. What I was surprised about is they said, "We want you to run the Canadian Space Agency." I said, "Space? Space? Space. I said, you know, I've got a degree. Nominally, it says a bachelor in business administration. In reality, the degree is in rugby and football. And my profs know the truth. And so those poor scientists and engineers at the space agency, they were pretty shocked. You know, for me, like, I think you probably remember that great sitcom Big Bang Theory. Like, I was living every episode, and I was Penny, okay? All that to say is amazing work, but in the end, after about a year and a half, I went to Veterans Affairs. And I was so fortunate that when the government came in 2015, they had taken all of the recommendations from the veteran ombudsman, at the time Chief Warrant Officer, retired Guy Parent, and he laid out all of these recommendations to move forward on the veteran benefits and programs, one of which was the creation of 2 centers of excellence. One of them was to be on mental health, including post-traumatic stress injuries, and the second was undetermined. Undetermined. Well, we launched right away then on the Atlas Institute for Veterans and Families, and we, in cooperation with the Royal Ottawa Hospital, that strong partnership, and focused on mental health equity for veterans and families across the country. It was launched. Terrific. But we still had one more center of excellence, and we had to figure out what was the need. What was the need? At Veterans Affairs, we had a great team lead for our research division, Dr. David Pedler, and Dr. Pedler produced magic. He came up with all of the options for government, because government doesn't want to be, you know, forced into a corner, and it was absolutely obvious that chronic pain was to be the focus. Because as we've heard this morning, while about 20% of Canadians suffer from chronic pain, that rate for veterans is double that number. And it's even higher for women veterans. And therefore, it was an easy sell to government. And we launched, seeking the great leadership of Dr. Ramesh Zacharias, on this Chronic Pain Center of Excellence for Canadian veterans. And as we saw on the previous slide, the immense amount of work that's occurring, and also the capacity building across the board. But what is also absolutely key is the fact that partnerships and collaboration amongst these 3 centers of excellence have now created a new capability for the Government of Canada. Having worked now for a number of ministers in both Defense and Veterans Affairs, ministers are constantly bombarded with new ideas, new initiatives. And before they launch onto new policy, they need evidence. They need evidence. And so Dr. Zacharias here, his initiative, his leadership, bringing together all 3 of these centers of excellence in a new structure called the evidence support model, in order to provide government a rapid response research capability. And that has now been launched. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, because I'm imploring all of you, we need you. We need you. We need you to be part of this. You know, the resources are there, but we need you. And not only to support, again, those military members and veterans and families, but all Canadians. All Canadians who will benefit from this coast to coast to coast. I just want to finish up here with a tribute. I am dedicating my part here, and the reason I volunteered, in fact, I was voluntold to do this. I love always giving a dedication to veterans who have done extraordinary things for Canada. I would like to dedicate this pitch to Dr. Rolly Armitage. Dr. Rolly Armitage was from the Ottawa Valley, West Carleton area. And way back when the Second World War started, at the age of 17, he just left high school, walked out of high school, walked in the recruiting center, age of 17, and said, I want to be a paratrooper. Well, he was found out. He was too young to be a paratrooper. So when he turned of age, he became an artilleryman, and he landed at Normandy beaches. And he fought through all of the World War II across Normandy, and into the Netherlands. He was the youngest sergeant in his regiment, the age of 20 years old. After the war, he took all the education benefits, came back here at home, and became a veterinarian, a very good veterinarian. And he was inducted in the Veterinarian Hall of Fame for doing the research and finding the transfer of rabies to horses in Canada. And also was an incredible leader. Was the mayor of West Carleton, ran the Carleton-Rideau Raceway, ran the Carp Airport. And tragically and sadly, after a full life, he died last June. He had wanted to go to the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landing and didn't make it. And I would visit Rolly on a monthly basis. As Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs, I kept tabs on a number of cohorts, whether it be World War II, Korea War, some of the peacekeepers, Bosnia, Rwanda, Somalia, and up to Afghanistan, just to make sure that we were doing a good job. And I would sit down with Rolly and say, how are we doing and how are you doing? And he would open up to me. And he said, you know what? He said, way back in, he said, I've never told this story to anyone. He said, back in Normandy, Battle of Caen in France, he said, we came under heavy artillery fire. And my troop officer got killed. His troop officer was from Toronto, young fellow. So my troop officer was killed. And I was furious because I respected that troop officer so much. He said, I just sat there on a rock and I was so distraught and I was so angry. He said, and I questioned, why did I join? Why did I leave the Ottawa Valley? I could be back there with my chums, chasing girls and having fun. And here I am instead in France, fighting and potentially dying. And then he said, then I realized, if not me, then who? If not me, who is going to serve and make the sacrifice, then who will ensure for peace, security, and freedom? And I share that with all of you because it applies to all of us. If not us, then who? And I look to what all of you are doing to make things better for Canadians. And the fact that just like Rolly all those years ago, you save lives. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank you for your service to Canada. God bless you, and have a great conference.
Well done. Wow. Well done. I think that's for you. Well done.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Well done.